So thank you for the question, and thank you for having this important summit. I must always remember to laugh at Chancellor Munoz's jokes, first of all. But I think what the segments can do to align is to express the enormity of the impact on California students that comes with these kinds of changes. So at the University of California, 41% of our California undergraduates qualify for Pell Grant. And changes to the Pell Grant, such as the increase in the number of units from 12 to 15, will be an impact of $40 million on those students. And when you combine the other kinds of changes that are proposed, such as the elimination of the Parent Plus loan, such as the elimination of the graduate loan, such as risk sharing for default, I think it's really important for all of the segments to provide together that very, very big number, because it is enormous. And to just put a little bit in context about the University of California and what all of these changes collectively mean, we are contributing $82 billion to the state's economic output. We have over 500,000 jobs in California supported by the University of California. University related spending accounts for $12 billion in state revenue. So the impact is enormous. When you multiply that, I think we will see and we can convey a huge, huge impact that I don't think can be dismissed or be ignored.
There we go. Just want to thank you. All right, there. Well, good morning, and Nathan Dietrich from the California State University Chancellor's Office, and we echo everything that was just said. At the CSU, we have over 208,000 students on Pell Grants right now. That's almost half of our undergraduates. And when you look at the cuts that have been proposed by Congress, and we'll see over 125,000 of our Pell students lose out on some portion of their Pell. And we've been from community colleges to private nonprofits, so you see we've been unified in standing up for Pell and not cutting it and expanding it to try and double it, adding summer Pell. We know the benefits of it. So as we face these cuts in Washington, we got to stay unified in California and across the country to really argue the value and show the value and not waver from that core value that public higher education is a public good, and this investment is important. We have over 65% of our students graduate with no debt. That is a tremendous stat that we should feel proud of, not because it's a stat, because real lives that are improved and put on a wonderful trajectory, not having that debt burden. And Pell Grant is a big part of that. So appreciate what you're saying, and we are committed to pushing back in any way, shape, or form on these deep cuts.
All right. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So good morning, colleagues. Rowena Tomaneng, Deputy Chancellor for the California Community Colleges. So agree with the standing together theme and being in unity around really fighting for Pell and increasing that affordability and basic needs support for all of our students. So that's one thing that I think that across our systems that we're doing very well. For California community colleges, of course, this is a big concern in terms of the skinny budget as well. In 23-24, we, across our 115 colleges, distributed $3.5 billion in financial aid to 860,000 students. And the majority of that aid is coming from the Pell Grant, which accounted for $1.75 billion. So you could see the gravity of the worry in terms of the reconciliation package and also with the risk sharing. I know that for our system, we have been actually doing very well in terms of addressing affordability and basic needs. We have basic needs centers across the majority of our colleges now with staff support. But I think one thing that we could do together as a system as we think about the potential impacts is perhaps we could also leverage some of the foundations that we have, to shore up and then increase the partnerships that we have, not only other educational partners, but some of our industry partners that are really working with our programs. So that's what I'll offer for that question.
Good morning, Alex Graves, the ICCU. We're the membership organization for our state's private nonprofit accredited universities, over 80 institutions, including several in the area here, including Fresno Pacific University. Agree with everything that's been said. I've been thinking a lot about, especially at this point, kind of thinking back to the pandemic days and how you saw increased communication, coordination, collaboration on ideas, best practices at the time, and how we were supporting students. And I've been thinking a lot about that recently in the environment we're in, on all the things that were mentioned by my colleagues. I mean, in our sector, I think we have about 47,000 Pell Grant recipients, but we also have a significant number who draw federal work study, CEOG. They're in our advanced degree programs, Grad Plus loans are definitely on the chopping block and something we're very concerned about. And I think this is a very important topic, and I think the idea of us all working together and supporting students, messaging our concerns about these proposals, lifting those up, is critically important, because today's student who's in a community college is tomorrow's student at Cal State Fresno, or today's student who's getting an undergraduate degree at UC is then going into the workforce and perhaps then coming into a graduate program at one of our institutions down the road. So I think we have to be steadfast in our communication about all our concerns, supporting all these students in these various programs, because again, it is going to impact those at every point in that journey. And I know that, there's sometimes the perception in our institutions that we don't, perhaps always serve a large degree of low-income or first-gen students, but just, locally here, Fresno Pacific University, for example, I think it's something like the majority of undergrads are the first in their families to go to college. I think about 40% are Pell recipients, over 50%, or excuse me, Cal Grant recipients, over 50% receive. How am I doing, President Stevens? He's on our board, and I was like, do I try and get the numbers? Am I gonna get in trouble if I get them wrong? But he was nodding, and thank you. So, I mean, those students, are definitely, at risk of the adverse impacts of what's being discussed at the federal level. And so appreciate this discussion and ongoing collaboration.
Thank you, Alex. I like the idea of learning from what we've already gone through with the pandemic. I think we've learned some best lessons there. And Yvette, when you were talking about this unified message and telling the story, I think that's really powerful. And we're going to need to continue to do that. And Nathan, I loved your fiscal impact of both of you from the CSU and the UC. The fiscal impact to our state is critical. So there's a financial reason why this needs to continue. There's obviously the human impact. And Rowena, you spoke a little about the opportunity to work together and leverage our foundations to be able to help with the affordability and the basic needs. And so this next question, talking about the impact of all this rhetoric on our visa holding students, on our DACA students, our undocumented students, do you see, or how are your institutions balancing the compliance with national policy shifts while staying grounded in equity and our commitment to serve all students? And I know equity for some is a really hot button topic, but it's really about serving all students. And so to that end, what best practices is your institutions doing that you might be able to share? How do you balance the new compliance measures with these policy shifts that we're seeing?
Well, I'll just start and say the CSU. Oh. Am I back? There we go. All right. Well, I'll just say the CSU, we need to stay the course. We have to serve our students and the wonderful diversity they represent from every corner of our state. Closer? All right, thank you. We've been committed to staying the course, following state and federal law, and serving our students in their needs. They have a tremendous amount of pressures from their home life. They have families who are concerned for their status in our country, and we have them concerned for how they're going to follow through on their education and get the academic support and social services support they need on our campuses. So we're not going to waver, and we understand the challenges, but state and federal law are clear, and we're going to keep following it.
Yeah, I think for us, while our institutions, right, we have a very diverse set of institutions art institutions to R1 research institutions to predominantly graduate institutions, faith-based institutions. But we do have, our institutions are all serving undocumented students or students from mixed status families. Our institutions are largely all enrolling and welcoming international students in both their undergraduate and graduate programs. And I think we have to acknowledge that, I think we have to acknowledge that there is a war on higher education right now. Its ideals, its principles, and certainly its funding mechanisms. And the federal government, they have bigger weapons, and they have more weapons to draw from and more ways to attack us than I think the other way around. And so I think the ways in which our institutions are approaching this varies, but I think to Nathan's point, they're all navigating the space of how do we maintain our steadfast commitments to not only our students, but our faculty and staff, who are also impacted by these various proposals and cuts and threats. Some institutions are approaching this with, know your rights workshops, and designated staff at the institution who are available to answer students or faculty and staff's questions to work with them. Others are, they have, for some of our institutions have law programs, and they are making their students, faculty, and staff available for, free legal counseling or partnering with community-based organizations. And I don't know if there's a perfect way to approach all the things that are being thrown at our students in all the ways that we're trying to respond and proactively support them, but I think it starts with just that human to human. We have to figure out how to support them in their journeys and minimize those disruptions to the extent we can while navigating again the overlays that do pertain to federal requirements.
Yvette?
Well, Alex has said everything. They have bigger weapons than we do. But I also think, and the university has about 40,000 visa holders among our faculty, staff, and students. I think one thing we might not have explored as much as we could, and perhaps this is something that could be piloted in the Valley, as so many things are, is how do we marshal together all of those separate efforts, our Know Your Rights workshops, our legal services, right? The education of our campus communities about what constitutes privacy, right? That everyone is as familiar, and I think that's something we could actually do together that would serve our families, many of whom are across our institutions, right? You might have a mom at a community college and a son at UC and another person at a community college. And so what could we do understanding that our student population will cover the gamut of our institutions that we might do right here in the Valley that would be streamlined, consistent, available? So we're all doing the things. Yeah. Could we do the things together in this moment that would set a new standard?
I like that. Rowena?
Great, thank you. Oh, okay, maybe closer. Okay, thank you. So for our California community colleges, for almost 10 years, we've been strongly committed. It's been our Board of Governors' goals for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility to do that work system-wide. And in the past 9 years or so, we've seen increased student success outcomes because of all of the resources that we've invested across our 116 colleges in that effort. So with all of the different EOs coming out, the ongoing attacks on DEI, we are staying the course as a system. And in fact, we've been messaging fairly consistently to the field in the last few months that funding is not going to be reduced. Our funding for all of our special population programs, which we have very many, are in place. We've been leaning into Proposition 209, and fortunately, because we work so closely with our system partners, our Office of General Counsel is in touch with AG Banta's office fairly regularly, and I know that when we do have new EOs to address, both our General Counsel and our government relations are in touch with each other to see, how is UC responding? How is CSU responding? How is AI CCNU responding? And can we perhaps respond in a collective manner because we are stronger together? So the other aspect of our response that I wanted to highlight is we've been focusing on making sure that throughout our system, we're very transparent and we're acknowledging the challenges that we continue to face, but doing those reminders that centering ourselves on our students and our programs, is the number one priority. And then secondly, we're also focused on a call to action. And we've been challenging our colleges to amplify the stories of our students and to be in touch with their congressional representatives as much as possible. And I know that Nathan, you talked about that, Yvette, you talked about that, and then Alex, you talked about that as well. So, and then one last thing is we are leveraging other partners as well for our undocumented students, our international students, our refugee students. We partnered last year with the President's Alliance on higher education and immigration. And all of our colleges can obtain a free membership and have access to their technical resources. And if you know a little bit about the President's Alliance, they do engage in advocacy and policy work, submitting amicus briefs, and then also just even recently litigation with the administration's revocation of international student visas.
Really powerful. I hope many of you are feeling a little bit more hopeful, knowing that you have all the segments saying we're staying the course, we're going to continue to educate not only our students but our community and our workforce, and hearing how we're leveraging our resources and marshaling our support for our students, I think is going to be key to our success. And we touched a little bit on federal funding, and all of us receive federal funding to various degrees to our institutions. Where do you see possible opportunity for better alignment in the federal advocacy efforts across our systems to protect our workforce, to protect our students, and really to protect California's unique opportunity and wonder that we're the fourth economy in the world? If the system and education in California, that will not continue. So it really is an economic issue as well as a moral issue. So what do you see opportunities for all of us to better align our federal advocacy across our systems?
I'm happy to start, and I'd say, if it works, do you want to go? I'm sorry. I saw you doing something over there, Alex. When we talk about impacting federal policy and state policy, we have to remember all politics is local. And we collectively, and each of you represent some incredibly diverse and successful and important institutions of higher education. And how we are not the ivory towers of keeping students out. We are door open institutions that, whether it's from our academic operations or our research at the CSU, it's applied research. This is students and faculty working in K-12 school sites. These are folks working with nonprofits. And these are folks doing mental health research and behavioral interventions. So when we have these programs at risk of being cut or being cut for a loss of federal funds, it's not just that a grant got cut or a cease order was sent out. It's what was that impacting? That was impacting your community. That was impacting your neighbors. And how we really bring it home with the value And what that work really is, I think, is important. And I know all of our institutions are doing that. We're demystifying a lot of the work that goes on in higher education to really make it relevant. And that's where we could use the partnership with this group is keep making it relevant to every individual's daily life and their social mobility and their prosperity. And I know we'll get through this, but it's gonna require us working in the local communities and being very clear about the value that higher education brings on a host of levels.
I would add that if we're not telling the story well, be our critical friends and tell us how we can tell the story better.
You just said that to a room full of educators. Y'all got the red pen out. You're gonna send us something. Okay, so be ready. All right, sorry.
Well, adding to Yvette's statement about the storytelling, I think from the national perspective, and some of you might be in dialogues with national partners, the storytelling is key. And so in some of the other organizations that I have the privilege to participate in, with minority serving institution program partners through American Council on Education, 4 community colleges nationally, the American Association of Community Colleges, and then other organizations, we have been talking actively about narrative change. And so narrative change, reframing the stories for not only the local level, but also at the national level. And maybe that's one avenue that we can work better together in terms of combining efforts and combining capacity across our systems to better tell that story. Because we know that in terms of mainstream media and storytelling, that does not come cheap. It's very expensive to even hire, consultants and strategists to help us with narrative. So I just wanted to add that to Yvette's point, that everyone is talking about narrative change with what's happening now. The other thing that I wanted to also add is that what Nathan was talking about in terms of just at the local level as well is, are we actually educating and communicating out, to our communities so that not only our institutions, but that our community members, family members of our students are also contacting, making the phone calls to their local congressional representatives.
Let's see if this is still on. It is. Just 2 quick thoughts to add. One is on the narrative. We've been talking a lot about this idea that higher ed is still worth it. It's hard work, but it's worth it. I think for several years there's been attacks from both sides of the aisle politically on higher ed for different reasons, questioning the value proposition of higher ed. And one thing that I think would be tremendously powerful, going back to I think something Nathan said, is if I had a one wish or kind of way to attack this on the local or regional level, California's Republican congressional delegation is not big. I think it could fit in a super shuttle if super shuttles are still a thing. But the Republican, majority in Congress is razor thin, and they have very different sets of priorities within that caucus itself. I think it would be incredibly powerful if you are in one of those districts to look around and see what other segmental institutions are in your region, and take a group of students to a meeting or a Zoom meeting from all those institutions and explain why the proposals on the table are so harmful to all educational pursuits for students in that region. Or if you have a member who really cares about a specific workforce area, can you bring in a workforce partner to explain why the elimination of Grad Plus is going to be harmful to that degree pipeline, or why the elimination or requirement that to get full Pell you have to be going full time. to just localize that message and explain that impact on students across a variety of institutions, because I think we all know that different members have different affinity for certain institutions or sectors of higher education. But to the extent we can present a unified front in a regional level, I think that would be incredibly impactful.
I just want to thank you for bringing in workforce, because I think in terms of just the storytelling and also the undervaluing of higher education, if all of our segments can actually start talking more about how we impact workforce and economic development, not only in our state of California, which is the biggest economy, but also nationally, I think we could leverage that with our Republican colleagues outside of California. So I know for community colleges at the national level, when we are having discussions about narrative change, we are amplifying, our contribution to the economy and how we are through, all of our students and all of our colleges are increasing opportunities for apprenticeships so that our communities, individuals can, get out into the workforce right away and earn, a living wage. And I think there's been a disconnect historically, because when folks in the mainstream talk about higher ed, they don't really connect it with workforce, but really everything that we do is leading to viable professions, for what our students are interested in.
And I'll add just one thing really fast. It's not just in Washington that we have to make this voice heard. It's here in California too. The CSU faces a $375 million budget cut. The UC has a roughly $400 million cut facing. So, we have to make the case not just in Congress and Washington, but every day here in California to make sure that Stan State doesn't get cut by $8 million, and Bakersfield by $8 million, and Fresno State by $19 million. These are real dollars at risk for our communities, and here in Sacramento or California and from Washington.
Just in addition to, we talk about higher education, but we also have to consider the medical enterprise that is also impacted. So for the University of California, that's nearly $10 billion in Medi-Cal and Medicare reimbursement that could be lost. That affects a region significantly. It affects the health and well-being of the people they represent. And so I think the more that we can talk about a representative is responsible for bringing resources to a region. I think the more we can help them understand what is lost to the people, to the economy, to the workforce, to the medical enterprise that keeps people healthy, to the agricultural enterprise, when we are not making discoveries and we are not in your farmers markets as our cooperative extension, helping people understand how to garden and grow and how to make their crops better. We have to be able to tell that story regularly. I mean, we should be as boots on the ground as we are in this space, in those offices as well.
I can't agree with you more, and I like the fact that we did touch on the political nature of this, and I think all of us would agree. We all work with Republicans and Democrats, and we work with sinners and saints and everybody in between, because we all agree on one thing. We want a better life for our family, we want a better life for our children, and we want a better life for our community. Being able to talk about federal funds and reframing the story that we're not just an Ivy League, you folks at the UC and the CSU just, no, everything goes to a job. Everything goes to bettering your life and making our healthy economy stay healthy. I really like that, and I like the idea of reframing. So I want to pivot here just a little bit, talk about your systems approach to the directive of the elimination of DEIA. And I think here in California, we were doing DEIA before we called it that, right? I think we could all agree on that. And we're in a unique state, being seen so liberal, but yet we have propositions. We do not allow criteria in hiring that many people think. In California we do. We don't have a quota system of students or coming in or workforce. So it's really this weird dichotomy that we're all facing. So in light of the efforts to eliminate DEIA, because there is a misunderstanding. Talk about demystifying. What do you see as some of the risks? Well, let me rephrase. How do we reframe DEIA efforts to preserve, the practice, and while navigating all of these shifts and attacks towards higher education in the policy arena? So we talked a little bit about storytelling, but give us some examples specifically how your institution is doing this work, or how you would like to see your institutions doing this work. No pressure.
Well, I have the great joy of serving as the Chief Diversity Officer for the University of California System, and I would ask why? Why reframe? And the reason is the administration has not defined what it means by illegal, and I use diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. They haven't defined that. Now, it's so wonderful that the Attorney General will be here later today, because he and his colleagues across the nation put some guidance together for us. And they said something I think is really important. The government is trying to say that everything that we do that supports underrepresented people, that tries to make better campus communities, is illegal. What they really mean is what is illegal are preferences and quotas. But they haven't said that because they want you to think everything's on the table. And so from my perspective, as institutions in California that have had to be compliant with Proposition 209 for a quarter of a century, we should make sure we are compliant. But it is not unlawful to have cultural experiences. It is not unlawful to have affinity groups. It is not unlawful to have programs and services that support the well-being of students, so long as those services are open and available to all. And I believe that is the ethos that we have followed, and that we are, as President Drake likes to say, square corners and tight edges. Make sure we are compliant with our law, because our law actually goes beyond federal anti-discrimination law to include not just discrimination against, but preference for. And we have worked very hard in the university to be race and gender neutral. And in that environment, we have the majority of our campuses are Hispanic serving. We have the most excellent group of undergraduates. We have the first institution in the 21st century, built in the 21st century, right here in the Valley, as a Research One university. And they have done that. You see, Merced, we have only become more excellent as we have become more diverse, and we should not back down from that premise. Now, that's today. We haven't seen Friday's massacre for today, right? But we should also know that a lot of these executive orders are being litigated. And the injunctions and the stays that we've seen where they've held, they've questioned whether they are actually constitutional. So we should follow our law, and we should make sure the programs and services that we have follow that law. Where they don't, we should fix that. But I don't think we should back down. Diversity isn't a bad word. Equity isn't a bad word. Inclusion isn't a bad word.
Can you just give her a round of applause?
I'm like, that's a mic drop.
Fire.
Yeah.
That was fire. Who wants to follow that? That was awesome. Let's expand. Let's keep going.
Okay, I can follow that. Similarly, we feel strongly in our system for community colleges that we are not backing down. As I said earlier, we've been leaning into Proposition 209. We know that the diversity work that we've been doing, as Carole pointed out, before we even called it DEIA, or DEIAA with our anti-racism work, we know that all of those efforts across the state have been leading to increased equity outcomes for our African American, Black, and our Latina students, and underserved Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander students, and American Indian students. So we continue to prioritize those communities in terms of the work that we're doing. But, we are also, really thinking through in light of, if the administration does start giving us clear definitions of DEI, because right now it's been very, very narrowly defined to ethnic studies curriculum and minority serving folks, LGBTQ. So whenever they, just to stay ahead of it, and not be reactionary down the road, we are monitoring everything very closely. I would say that we have a cross-departmental team at the chancellor's office that I lead, to help us, start really looking at the language that we use, in our websites. Nothing has been changed yet, but just to stay ahead of it. We've been intentionally naming all of our student groups and populations that we've been serving, so that we're trying to demystify that very narrow, incorrect definition of DEI. So with our Vision 2030 goals, we're calling out veterans, we're calling out student parents, we're calling out working learners, we're calling out, serving our rural communities, not just our urban and suburban communities. So just adding to the inclusivity that we've already been working on for many, many years.
Gentlemen?
And you couldn't say it better than Yvette just did, and Rowena, and like it indicated, we're going to stay the course. We have the Prop 209 boundaries we are very well aware of on all of our universities, and we know what state and federal law allows us to do, and that diversity that we've been living and embracing with across our campuses has made us strong. It's helped increase graduation rates, it's helped increase access, and following through on what we started is going to be critical.
I love that. I read, I don't know if it was one of our general counsels for one of our systems. And when this first came out, they said, we were compliant and following the law before this executive order. The law has not changed. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important for all of us. Alex, last word?
I think the only thing I would add, and similar to, I don't remember to mention, but I think 3/4 of our institutions are either HSIs or emerging HSIs. And we didn't get to that point doing things that were illegal or that weren't already best practices. I think unlike my public counterparts, we as institutions were not subject to Prop 209 and the Supreme Court ruling from whenever that was. It feels like a lifetime ago. It has changed that dynamic in our sector. But I think what I've heard multiple institutional leaders in our institutions say, similar to my colleagues, is I want them to define what they're talking about and then prove in a court of law that what we're doing is illegal and that it's harmful to populations. Because again, the strategies many of our institutions, like I'm sure many of you all here see in practice in your regions, is we're partnering with our community colleges. And when you look at the population of students who are transferring to our institutions from community colleges, it's an incredibly diverse population because that's the population of students who are in our community colleges. Our schools are partnering with under-resourced and Title I high schools and districts, and doing college advising and college prep programs and partnerships in that sense to help promote those students to go to college wherever they go, whether it's here in California or elsewhere. And so go prove it in the court of law, and if those are found to be harmful practices, then we'll adjust our practices.
Any other last comments? Because this is so important for us, I'm going to ask one more DEIA question. This can be a speed question, sort of. And we've talked a little bit, and maybe you could lead us off, but you have a lot of educators and family members, people here. Could you give them some specifics that they could maybe take back with them to the classroom, to their churches, to the grocery stores, on how they might be able to communicate the value of diversity, equity, inclusion, and access to their community?
Well, I think part of communicating the value is recognizing the kinds of things that are happening in your schools and communities that might be considered illegal. A program in your school that helps students in algebra, go up and complete the algebra sequence. Because it is a school that has predominantly Latino students, they might determine that to be a DEI program. So I think it's really important to help people understand that the pathways and pipelines that we are trying to create from your schools and colleges to others are in danger. The programs that you consider very important, the TRIO programs, the Gear Up programs, the MESA programs, all of those things under this expansive definition of what's illegal would be off limits for us to do. And so if you can imagine not being able to help students with the help of universities in your schools, because your schools are predominantly a demographic, could be off limits. I think that's an important thing for people to understand, to really ground it in, this is about MESA, this is about Puente, this is about Gear Up, this is about TRIO. It's about those things that led to many of your social mobility opportunities and the careers you have, but also are the future for so many of our students. And I think putting a name to what it is they're trying to wrap into what is illegal is helpful.
Thank you, I think that's really powerful. Rowena?
Oh, yeah. Yvette, thank you for mentioning Mesa, Puente, TRIO. Upward Bound. We have Umoja, our statewide for the California community colleges. Yesterday, I'm just making a connection because yesterday I attended another Puente graduation. So I've been attending Puente graduations for over 25 years in the California community colleges, and every time I attend a graduation, I hear students talking about how Puente has really impacted not only themselves, but the lives of their families, the lives of their cousins, the lives of their siblings. And one of the students that spoke yesterday said, I'm here in Puente because my cousin was in Puente at your college, and my brother was in Puente at your college. And so I think to your point, it's how do we tell families in our communities, in the neighborhoods, that this program that has impacted current generation and will impact future generations, we're not going to have this because the federal government is telling us that it's illegal, that it's DEI. So I just wanted to illustrate that because I just attended a recent graduation for our programs. Similarly, MESA, I attended a MESA graduation as well. And students, also talked about that they were so excited transferring to a CSU, transferring to a UC, transferring to a private, and that they had that opportunity and they were able to thrive in their community college because of the support and the wraparounds that we provide them, through the program.
I'll say exactly that. Those programs that you've mentioned have led to opportunity, and that opportunity at CSU is reflected in our diversity. There's over 200,000 Latino undergraduates. And we are, through these programs, we've doubled our 4-year graduation rate for those students and all of our students. So we will keep that going, and we will keep that going as we stay the course.
Thank you. Alex? No, you said it all. All right, well, let's transition. We've heard some promising collaborative efforts. We've talked about how we need to continue to work together to message. And I think it's important not only as educators, but our systems, how do we work together. Besides the obvious barriers that we've spoken about, there are some other barriers that exist that across our systems, but how might we overcome and be able to build a more cohesive, a kinder, equitable education ecosystem here in California? We take away all the federal, there are some some barriers. If you had the magic pin for the day or the magic wand, how could we build a more cohesive educational system here in California? I'm looking at you, Yvette.
The magic wand. So, there's always opportunity in crisis. And if we had to save money, what might we do to remove the barriers to transfer? How might we create a streamlined single transfer system that would cost a lot less in bureaucracy and result in much more transfer? If we lost so much Pell money, right, students are going to make different decisions about where they go. And if more students are headed to community colleges in order to save money, then we need to make sure that the burdens that exist now for our students don't exist in the future. Similarly, for students who might be impacted by deportation, what might we do as a set of systems to smooth the ability of those students to get a degree, even if they can't get it here? I think it's time for us to have these conversations across our systems and use what's a terrible time to maybe improve some of the practices we have.
In addition to streamlining the transfer process, we have done a lot of great work at the campus level at Stanislaus State, the Warriors on the Way program. We've had a lot of different community colleges. Make them broader and impact more lives is our challenge and something we'll all be working towards.
I wanted to add that, again, we are doing, much more collaboration in the last few years, decade than we've ever had. So I'm very hopeful and I'm very excited about the intersegmental work happening right now in terms of implementation of the associate degree transfer pathway with Cal GETSI. And then along with that, some of us are in the same meetings, for, again, what would help streamline transfer with AB 1111 and Common Course numbering. And again, in similar meetings, also to think through, the opportunities that baccalaureate degrees can offer for community colleges as well. And, mostly partnership with the CSU in terms of the review, and looking at potential duplication. But, in our system for California community colleges, we have increased the number of baccalaureate degrees being offered across our colleges since the pilot phase that began in 2014. So at the last Board of Governors meeting, we were happy to announce that we have 47 programs in place across the state, and then we are approaching our 7th cycle. So I think that's also an opportunity that I would love to be able to talk with UC about in the future, similarly with our colleges, our independent colleges and universities, especially if we have these major impacts in relation to funding. Like what would it take if we could have additional baccalaureate degrees offered on community college campuses?
Bravo. I saw some people in the back of the community college table going, yay. Alex?
Yeah, I think I would say at the outset that, when there's parts of the process or the intersegmental discussions that are not working well, I think those have gotten a lot of attention. But I think day to day, week to week, year to year, there's a lot of collaboration that is occurring, just people rolling up their sleeves and being in those meetings, whether it's, for example, we've been working with UC Office of the President to integrate our institutions into the Assist platform. I think we have 30 or so that are onboarded in that through some state funding we were able to get a few years ago. We're very appreciative of the work from UC on that front. Very appreciative of the work around ADT and the AB 928 work group to expand ADT pathways to STEM fields and other high-need fields, and we're very excited about that work and our opportunity to bring those different pathways into some of our institutions. We were just on a Zoom last week talking about ADT and how we can work between our systems to better communicate those opportunities that exist for those pathways to our institutions. In addition to all the other things, right? I mean, the C2C body, which is bringing really, I think, important data to the discussion and the deliberations. I think the one other area where we see some opportunity for positive development forward in this space is there's several different proposals out there currently around some kind of higher education and workforce coordinating body. We see value in that because we think that can help address both statewide and regional workforce needs and leverage all the opportunities from our public institutions, but also our institutions throughout the state to help meet those needs for students and communities.
Alex, I really liked what you were talking about, and it kind of built on what you were saying, that in terms of a good crisis, and don't waste it, because there is an opportunity to be able to work together. But you talked a lot about opportunity amidst this wave of fear that I think some of us are feeling, and especially looking at the skinny budget, there is some fear there. So what are some of the, and we'll take it from a personal level as educators and professionals, what gives you hope in seeing some of the opportunities let's expand a little bit more on those, let's end on a high note, shall we? What are some of the things that you see in your professional day-to-day life that gives you hope about the opportunity of our strengths together and how we can work better together?
I think what gives me hope is, I think to Yvette's point, right, like there are, in the face of all these terrible financial cuts being considered, we're going to have to think creatively and collaboratively about how we meet the needs of students in that changing dynamic. And I think for me, I see examples locally of some really interesting things that our institutions have done in partnership with others. And I think this is an opportunity to look at those interesting ideas being pursued and think if there are ways to scale those. So just for example, Whittier College several years ago had announced a partnership with Rio Honda College, where they were making residence hall space available to Rio Honda students. The students had access to all the Whittier College facilities, the library, the gym, the advisor, everything. And they figured out a way to do that was beneficial to students there. I would love to see, that expanded. University of Redlands has a Redlands Promise with community colleges in San Bernardino. It's a guarantee with financial aid attached to it if you're Cal Grant eligible to make sure that you can attend and graduate in 2 years at a certain price point that's comparable if you go to a local CSU. I think there's opportunities to expand those types of partnerships across our institutions as well. And so I think the point is that in the midst of all of our systems prioritizing our commitment and service to students and minimizing the disruptions and impacts of these other actions on their lives in pursuit of higher education, there are pockets of examples of really, I think, interesting partnerships that are occurring that I think we should think about scaling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. So what gives me hope is just when I take away the distractions and frankly, the additional meetings that, the majority of us are having, with the different EOs and what have you, is that I just sit back and I look at all of the amazing work happening already. This is an intersegmental panel, but that there's that commitment to collaboration. And, even if we are not in agreement, on the path forward, for some of the transfer pathways that we're working on, there is a commitment, to keep at it, to find that path forward. For California community colleges, it's just really exciting work that we are doing for Vision 2030. There's lots of work moving up and down the state, with opportunities for workforce and economic development, opportunities for equitable baccalaureate attainment, and then we've delved into opportunities to really explore from a human perspective the future of learning, and then also AI with our digital center. So there's just so much great work happening, and centering on our students and making sure that we're hearing their stories and their stories are at the forefront. That's what gives me hope.
Great, and I know I'm getting the eye of time, so we're gonna go quickly. What gives you hope? We'll go to Alex and then end with you that quickly.
I think the hope is what we heard. It's our students, and we're seeing. This is graduation season. We're in an exciting time. We have hundreds of thousands of students graduating, and when you talk to them, they all have their unique path. And I had an opportunity to join a few in Sacramento last week, and hearing about their path from community colleges to the CSU, and being part of an ADT program or a 2+2 program or concurrent enrollment program, and seeing across our system many more of these programs being set up at the community college level and CSU campus level, and seeing the momentum there is to really improve lives and make those pathways more expansive is what gives me hope. And just not checking social media so often is also wise.
Yvette, last word?
So, the administration has the prerogative to decide what it wants to prioritize, right? And we've seen that happen before. We saw that around stem cells. So even if our research footprint is smaller, we have excellent students. We have the best of the best in terms of faculty across our institutions. We will continue to educate great students. We will continue to make great discoveries. We will continue to be the excellent institutions that have made the state so great. And so I always feel like, the pendulum will swing, but the excellence will remain intact, and that's what gives me hope.
I love that. I want to thank our panelists. I think you heard today we have a commitment to our students, a commitment to collaboration, and we will continue. We will persist. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Goldsmith and panelists. We really, really appreciate it. We're going to take a short kind of a break because